listening to Midnight Horror Ledger, records salvaged from sun-bleached boardwalks, roadside motels at midnight, and campground trails that don't quite loop. Tonight, 10 true summer vacation horror stories. What you're about to hear was stitched from booking emails, trail maps, ferry schedules, and the confessions people whisper after the bonfire dies. Set your shoulders down, breathe slow, trace the exits between beach, trail, and room, and note the lifeguard tower, the parking lot light, the key on its plastic fob. Keep one light you trust.
I booked the beach house because the listing had 3 things I trust: a slanted porch, a clothesline, and a crooked wind chime. The host wrote, "Keys under the mermaid. Please sign the guest book." The mermaid was a rusted bottle opener screwed to the frame. The key was warm, like someone had just set it down. Inside smelled like lemon oil and old paper. The guest book sat on a side table, thick, leather, with seashells glued to the cover. I opened it, smiled at polite entries, then noticed the spine bulging. There was a second book hidden beneath, a twin, thinner, the leather newer. In the first book, guests wrote about sunburns and board games and how the steps are slick at night. In the second, entries started the same handwriting even, then melted into corrections. Steps are slick became stairs count wrong. Board games became pieces move. Sunburn became heat in the walls after midnight. Names were crossed out with a single line so lightly you could still see them. I laughed at myself. A prop. A prank. I poured wine and watched the sunset where the ocean disappears into a clean horizon. The wind chime stopped moving even though the air hadn't. Night folded in fast like a tent collapsing. I took the little staircase down to the sand. I counted 12 steps. On the way back up, I counted 11. My heel slipped on the last one, not there, and I grabbed the rail hard enough to feel a splinter become a passenger in my skin. The wind chime rang once. Inside, something was wrong with the walls. They radiated a warmth that felt like breath. Even the photographs along the hallway seemed slightly fogged from inside the glass. The second guest book lay where I hadn't left it, open to a page marked with a dried ribbon of seaweed. The entry read, "If the tide is loud indoors, wait, it passes through." At 2:11 a.m., the house exhaled. There's a sound old places make when they settle, a creak passing from joist to joist like a gossip. This wasn't that. This was water in lungs. I stepped into the hall and my bare feet found cool, not cold, slickness, a thin sheen that reflected the ceiling fan as if the floor were an eye. The photographs had beaded as if from rain behind the glass. I opened the front door and the porch looked wrong. Same crooked chime, same mermaid opener, but the railings were reversed, the nail heads on the inside, not the street side. I stepped back in. The housewarming heat closed around my shoulders like a shawl. I took the 2 guest books to the kitchen and read them under the hissing light. The second book stopped 3 pages from the end. The last complete entry. We tried to leave by the beach. The numbers don't add up when the tide is in the wood. Below it, an unfinished line. 2 words. Count backwards. The wind came up suddenly. The mermaid opener rattled on the frame. A shadow crossed the kitchen window like a person passing with their head bent under a weight. The house gave one soft knock from inside the walls. I went to the stairs again. They looked like 12. I stepped down and counted. 12, 11, 10, and then 10 again, like the landing had made a second version of itself. "Count backwards," I whispered. I did. 12 on the way up felt right, like tracing a memory. The house quieted as if pleased. I slept with the second guest book pinned under my pillow like a saint's medal. At dawn, the photographs were dry again. The walls were cool. Outside, a neighbor I hadn't noticed the day before watered flowers that didn't need it. She called, "You're in Seaward?" I nodded. She said, "Porch will turn on you if you're late to check out." "What time is checkout?" She smiled without her eyes. "It's always earlier than you think." I left early. I left the keys on the Mermaid, not under. I took the second guest book. Don't judge me. It rode home on the passenger seat like a lapdog. The first time I opened it in my apartment, a folded paper fell out that hadn't been there before. A rigid, salt-stiff stair count with little tally marks and a final note. "If you forget how to leave, remember how to arrive. The house does."
I hiked the Ridge Trail because the park brochure called it a forgiving loop for contemplative walkers. I brought water, a sandwich, a map the ranger circled with a pen that had chewed marks. On the back, someone had written 13 in a corner and erased it hard enough to polish the paper. The mile markers were cute, cedar posts burned with numbers and a tiny pine cone stamp. Mile 7 had a friendly beetle. Mile 10 had a cairn kids had decorated with ribbon. Mile 12 had a view that made me say a low, bad word at the open world. Mile 13 wasn't there, just the faint ghost of a rectangle in the grass where a post had been. I checked the map. The loop should have bent back toward the trailhead. The trail continued like a sentence that refuses a period. I walked on. The forest got older in a hurry. Bark thickened to armor. The mosquitoes vanished like they'd hit a wall, and the air took on the smell of wet pennies. On the right, a stack of stones marked a spur trail that wasn't on my map. Beside it, a little tie of red survey tape knotted to a branch, fresh, not sun-faded. I'm not an idiot. I stayed on the main path. A mile later, another cairn, same knot, same tape, same twig broken like a bent finger. I took out my phone for a photo, and it opened to the compass on its own, the red needle spinning slow, then stopping with my phone pointing behind me. I laughed and turned off the screen. The trail turned with me. The thing about loops, real ones, is that eventually you recognize your own boot prints. I did. I saw where the heel cut deeper when I'd stopped at noon, where I'd scuffed the dust when a deer crashed through brush. But there were also other prints that matched mine too well. Weight, stride, the way the sole wore slightly at the outside edge. At what I thought must be mile 14, I stopped to eat. The sandwich tasted like a dare. I took out the map. Someone or something had added a line faint as breath, a pencil curve that showed a second loop out beyond the printed one, like a shadow ring. The penciled 13 stood out there, not where it should be. I went back. I told myself that. I walked the way I came, counting posts. 12, 11, 10, 9, then 11 again, like the forest had cut and pasted a piece of my memory into a new paragraph. I picked up a stone and put a little X on it with a marker. I placed it at the base of a tree and walked on. When I came to the next bend, a stone with an X waited, not mine, but mine, sitting at a different tree. I started to talk out loud the way you talk to pets and babies and things with teeth. No thank you. I'm done. I'm going home now. The sun didn't dim. It shifted, deciding a new afternoon like a god with a grudge. I took the spur with the red tape. The forest said nothing. The ground fell away into a clearing too round to be natural, ringed with stones blackened by old fires. In the center, a cedar post burned with a number, 13, leaning, lashed to a stake with the same survey tape. Pinned to it with a nail was a laminated note in ranger font. If you reach this marker, you are not on a maintained trail. Stop, orient, return. On the back, handwritten, messy, you cannot return, you can remember. I closed my eyes and remembered, not the path, but the feeling of leaving the car, the smell of sun-heated dashboard, the weight of keys, the slosh of iced coffee in the cup holder. I let the memory fill my mouth like a taste. When I opened my eyes, the spur trail had thinned to a deer track. The main loop appeared, where it should have been all along. I walked out backwards for 100 steps, then turned, and didn't stop until the trailhead kiosk looked like a kind face. The ranger on duty had the same chewed pen. I gave him the laminated note. He didn't read it. He said, "Sometimes 13 lives out there." "How do you close it?" I asked. He shrugged. "We don't. People do." He circled the loop on another map and, without looking, scrubbed the corner where someone had written 13 and erased it shiny.
I picked the roadside motel for the neon that still worked and the Coke machine that took quarters. The sign on the office door said, "Pool closes at dusk, no exceptions." It was June. Dusk takes its time. My room smelled like someone had once smoked a good cigar and then regretted it. The bedspread was the color of bandages. I dumped my bag and went to the pool with plastic ice bucket courage. A single lane light glowed underwater like a pale eye. The closed sign leaned against the gate. A kid in room 12 ran laps along the second floor in bare feet. A couple argued softly near the ice machine, fight-weary and kind. At the far end of the pool, the deep-end rope twitched. There was no one in the water. I dipped a toe. It wasn't cold. It was room temperature, like bath water left to think. The surface trembled without breeze. Under the light, the blue tiles spelled 17, my room number, picked out in darker glaze. I blinked. The tiles were plain again. I waited until the sun slipped behind the scrubby trees. The office light flicked off. The pool light brightened, as if proud of being the only thing awake. I let my hand trail the surface. My fingers tingled like I'd touched a 9-volt battery. Somewhere, a screen door creaked the way it does in movies. The tiles spelled help for a frame and then went back to blue. The rope moved a little farther down. I looked for a drain to blame, a filter exhaling. But the hum came from under the concrete, not the pump house. A splash from the shallow end, small, like someone stepping in carefully. I said out loud, "Nope." The word sounded good in the motel air, a lone syllable with a pocket knife. Back in my room, the bathroom mirror had fog from the inside. The AC kicked, coughed once, then settled into a rhythm like breathing against a pillow. I set my glass on the nightstand where the Bible should have been. Inside the drawer, instead, a Polaroid of the pool at night. The tiles spelled stay. I went to the office. The bell was a bell. It made a sound like a small confession. The night clerk was a woman my age with an expression like a substitute teacher. I held up the photo. "Do you know what this is?" She looked once and then, without glancing, turned the picture over on the counter. 17 sees the pool. That's why we say no after dark. 17? Me? She slid a different key across the counter on a blue tag. 3. Sleep in 3. Leave 17's key in 17. Why 17? She tapped a ledger. Paper, not computer. There were notches beside the 17 line. Pencil marks pressed hard through the page. We changed the pool drain in '02. It still remembers. I moved. Room 3 smelled like lemon and new paint. I slept. I dreamed the pool like a mouth, tiles for teeth, the rope a bit of gristle. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to water sounds in the wall, not pipes, lapping. At checkout, the clerk handed me a receipt and a quarter from the Coke machine. "For luck," she said. I asked if anyone else ever saw words in the tiles. She gave the motel a look like a worn-out apology. "Mostly people who count." On the drive out, the neon flickered from vacancy to can for a second and then back. In the rear view, the pool gate stood open, closed sign tucked under a lounge chair.
Last tourist ferry to the island, but the dockhand said there was a midnight run for workers. Cash. He didn't make eye contact. The boat was older than its paint, older than the gulls. I paid and stood at the rail. We pulled out with that particular ferry wobble, confident but tipsy. 8 passengers, including me. A woman in a floral dress clutching a cake box that smelled like cinnamon. A man in a safety vest with a face like the moon. A boy with a tackle box and hands too clean. Fog made a wall out past the breakwater. The horn blew once, long, like a warning to whales. We slid into it and the mainland vanished. Time did the thing it does in fog. It loosened. I checked my phone. No bars, no clock, just the camera icon like an eye. Halfway across, or a minute in, or an hour, the lights flickered. The safety vest man counted under his breath. 2, 3, 4, like he knew the pattern. The captain didn't call out ETA. He didn't call out anything. The cake box woman smiled and nodded at me like we were neighbors. The boy opened his tackle box, empty. I went to the cabin door to ask how long. Inside, the clock read 12, in red digits, unplugged. On the wall, a framed safety poster showed the boat's layout, arrows to muster points. A corner of it had peeled, revealing an older version underneath with different arrows, different exits. Back on deck, a second boat moved alongside, same wake, same horn tone, except there wasn't a second boat. It was our reflection on the fog, a ghosted twin, keeping pace a little too near. On its deck, a man who looked like me leaned on the rail and didn't see me looking. The island appeared as if someone turned a page. Lights at the dock winked once, twice, wrong somehow, like a person blinking while you count. The crew tossed lines. The passengers did not move. They held their breath the way people do in photos. The dockhand on the island side glanced at me, frowned, and shook his head. Not at the boat, at me. I stayed aboard. The others disembarked in a single choreographed motion. Cake box, vest, boy, and 5 more. I realized I couldn't describe, though I'd looked at their faces for an hour. We pushed off again. The captain never turned. The clock in the cabin still read 12. The older safety poster showed a third deck my feet had never touched. The fog felt like breathing in a mask. Back at the mainland, the dockhand took my ticket and didn't look up. I said, "Is the midnight ferry every night?" He said, "It's the same night every time." He pushed a paper schedule at me. All the times were 12. A smear of cinnamon crossed the corner like an old thumbprint. I didn't go to the island the next day, or any day after. Some nights, if the wind's right, I hear a horn from my apartment 3 miles inland. One long, once. I count. I don't move.
I booked the A-frame for its triangle of sky and the promise of slow mornings. The host wrote, "Please don't use the green kayak, owners." There were 3 kayaks, red, yellow, and the green one tucked under the deck like a secret. Day 1, red kayak. The lake was glass. My paddle made careful punctuation. A house across the water had a flag that hung limp. A man on a dock waved without joy. On my way back, a green shape moved under the surface near the drop-off, sleek, long. A fish, I promised myself. The green kayak sat where it had been, dry, a spider web unbroken across its bow. That night, something knocked from under the deck in a rhythm like a bad joke. "Who's there?" The walls were thin enough to hear a fish think. It knocked again. I turned the porch light on and saw the green kayak had shifted. Its nose pointed at the lake, not along the wall. Day 2, yellow kayak. I stayed closer to shore. The man across the water wasn't on his dock. The flag's colors felt wrong, like someone had washed them in salt. At the far cove, stairs underwater led down from a stand of birch, a drowned stairwell with weeds for carpet. My paddle bumped the top step. Something tapped back from below as if politely asking me not to come in. Back at the A-frame, the green kayak lay in the grass, half out, as if something had climbed from it or into it and left in a hurry. The spider web was torn. A smear of algae marked a handprint on the gunnel, 4 long fingers, a thumb too low. I called the host. She said, "Don't worry about the green one. He knows his way home." He? A pause like a dropped spoon. The owner. Does he live under my deck? Another pause. He's on the water by choice. At dusk, the lake lay like old glass, cloudy, then suddenly clear. A wake moved across it with no boat to blame, drawing a line from the drowned stairs to my shore. The porch light flickered and steadied. The underdeck knocked once for yes, twice for no, and then twice. I put the red and yellow kayaks in the yard and wedged them with cinder blocks the way you brace a door. I put a bell on the green one like you do with a cat. I sat up with a thermos and a sweater and the stupidity that comes with stubbornness. After midnight, water poured somewhere it shouldn't. The bell rang once, then once again farther from the porch. In the moonlight, the green kayak slid across the water without a paddle, the bell chiming gentle as a lullaby. Something in it sat up and waved, a shape like a man, too spare, too long, too patient. It drifted toward the drowned stairs and down, the bell ringing faster for a moment and then not at all. At dawn, the green kayak was back under the deck, dry, as if it had dreamed its own errand. The bell hung on a nail. I took my coffee to the shore and didn't drink it. Across the water, the flag was gone. The man's dock was empty and tilted. I left a note in the guest book. "Don't use the green kayak. He will use you." I didn't lock the door when I left. Things that live on the water don't care about locks. They count stairs and bells and whether you say hello before or after you look down.
Took the maintenance job at the amusement park because I needed cash and believed in bolts. Machines tell the truth if you listen. The day crew smiled big. The night crew didn't smile at all. My first assignment was the wood coaster, the old one that sounds like a barn learning to scream. Rule 1, ride it once after close, lights on, no passengers, to feel the track. The supervisor clicked the lap bar down on me and rested a hand there too long. "If the number's wrong, you say it," he said. "What number?" "You'll know." We crested the lift hill. The lights cast taut shadows. The track looked like bones. At the top, the whole park exhaled. The coaster dropped and the world became a wooden sentence shouting commas. At the brake run, the counter, a red LED, blinked 1. The operator's screen showed 2 restraints engaged. I was alone. I told myself a bar had stuck. I checked them, all green. The second test run, counter read 1, screen read 3. The air in the back car smelled like aftershave and dust. The supervisor didn't look surprised. "Sometimes summer is heavier than it looks," he said. "Do your lap." I walked the catwalk with a headlamp and a prayer I never admit to out loud. Halfway along the first drop, someone passed me, excuse me, shoulder brushing mine, body cold like they'd come from a freezer. My light caught nothing. The catwalk creaked a little with 2 sets of step sounds. I kept my hands on the rail. Back in the control booth, the counter still reported 1, the screen 4. The logbook had erasures, thick ones. "Don't ride alone," someone had written, then scribbled out, "Do ride alone," below that. At 3:17 a.m., the number the park loves because it looks like a roller coaster if you turn your head, security radioed, "Check your queue, gates open." It was. I'd locked it. A single footprint showed in the dust, a heel with a chip in it, like someone had worn the same shoes too long. The supervisor finally sighed. There was a fire in 98, not big, just enough. They didn't evacuate right. Now the train keeps its count. How do you fix it? He shrugged like a man who's made peace. You don't, you make room. He set the train to run empty until dawn. The counter blinked 0, then 1. The train rattled into the dark, an empty sentence finishing itself. Before I left in August, I wrote it one last time. The operator's screen showed 2 restraints engaged. I kept the seat next to me open and my hand on the bar. At the brake run, I said out loud, "I know you're there. You go first." The lap bar on the empty seat popped open by itself. Old hydraulics, I told myself, and a cold patch of air rose like gratitude. I took a different job in fall, library, quiet, predictable. But sometimes in my kitchen, the fridge motor kicks on, and for 1, 2, 3 seconds it sounds like a chain lift, and I count 1, 2, 3, and wait to see.
I rented the seaside bungalow because it came with 2 bikes the color of dried blood and a chalkboard by the door that said, "Take only what you can return." The town was the kind made of postcards. A bakery, a bait shop, a bookstore with a cat named Captain who didn't earn it. First day, I rode to the pier and back. People smiled too fast, like they knew me already. That night, the chalkboard had marks I hadn't made. 4 lines and a slash. 5. Underneath, in tiny chalk, Thursday. It was Tuesday. The bikes were always exactly where I left them until they weren't. On Wednesday morning, one leaned against the door, front wheel turned toward the road. In the basket, a Polaroid of me riding it yesterday, taken from above. I looked up. A seagull blinked like a sentry. I erased the chalk. It reappeared by noon, 6. Thursday arrived with the sound of bells, not church, buoys, all ringing though the water was flat. The whole town seemed to pause. Curtains went still. Captain opened one eye and closed it again. A man at the bait shop said, "You'll want to ride east tonight." "Why?" "It's East's turn." He smiled like a knife. At dusk, the bike's front wheels both faced east. The chalkboard said, "Go now," in a hand like a child's that had learned to draw letters from memory, not sight. I don't like being told what turn to take by a neighborhood that buys its charm in bulk, but I also like leaving alive, so I rode. Half a mile out, chalk arrows appeared on the pavement, fresh and smudged as if made by someone biking while drawing. They led to a cul-de-sac of identical houses with porches staged like alibis. Above me, a drone hummed, tiny, insistent, following as polite as a fly. I waved and it backed off, then followed again, sheepish. At the end of the street, a group stood with bikes like mine, rust red, baskets empty. Men, women, ages ranging. One lifted a hand. "We didn't think you'd come." "Should I have?" A woman with a doctor's posture said, "It's census night. We make sure the number stays right." "What number?" They unfolded a town map older than it should have been, edges softened by rain, with tiny chalk marks in a grid. "Summer is heavy," she said. "If we don't ride it off, it stays." Behind us, the buoys rang out of turn. The drone dropped lower, then settled on a porch rail as if it were done pretending to be anything but an eye. We rode, slow then faster, the way you do when you're trying to outpace a smell. People stepped out of their porches and counted under their breath. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then started again. At the far roundabout, we stopped and waited without talking. The air lightened by a weight I only noticed when it lifted. Back at the bungalow, the chalkboard was clean. The bikes faced the wall. Captain sat on the step like he'd done his part and was thinking about fish. I left town the next morning because I don't want to live somewhere that needs census nights. I kept the Polaroid of me from above. When I hold it at arm's length, the drone isn't in the frame, but a small shadow is, right over my shoulder, shaped like
at a state park famous for dark skies. My friends wanted meteors. I wanted quiet. The ranger said, "Stay behind the rope after midnight. The rim crumbles." He said it like a bedtime story. At 1:03 a.m., meteors started like faint scratches, then knives. The sky was a bowl of light someone was trying to wash. We lay on our backs and said wow until wow lost flavor. My phone buzzed with a silent notification. New airdrop from RimCam. I declined. It offered again. I put the phone away. Across the canyon, a line of small lights traced the far rim. Headlamps, except the park had closed that side. The ranger's truck idled by the bathrooms. He didn't look up. We walked to the rope like children testing a rule. A soft sound came from beyond it, sand sliding under a foot. I leaned, used my headlamp like a blade. The beam caught a staircase cut into the crumbly cliff where there had been none. Steps too even, recently brushed. My light reflected off something metallic below. A tripod pointed up toward us. My phone buzzed again. I gave in. The airdrop was a video file. I watched. It showed me aiming my headlamp toward a staircase, then turning the light on my own face and smiling a smile I don't own. The timestamp was 3 minutes from now. I shut off the lamp. The lights across the canyon winked out one by one, as if someone pinched them between finger and thumb. My friends whispered, "Do you see that?" I said, "No." I took their hands and walked us back to the tents without looking behind us, because my stomach felt like a beating heart. At 2:11 a.m., the ranger knocked on our tent pole, not the flap. "Stay zipped. Folks get copied out here." "Copied?" He sighed like a man who doesn't like the words he has. Phones trade faces. The canyon keeps a version it likes. We sweep them in the morning. We left before dawn. I checked the park's public photo feed out of morbid curiosity. In the gallery, under Best of Summer, there we were. Me with my lamp on my face, my flat, wrong smile, captioned, "Visitors enjoying the rim."
I went to the summer festival because my 12-year-old self still believes in music like weather. The entry line was a snake with sunburn. The volunteer wrapped my wristband tight and smiled in a way that said, "I will forget you in 1 second." It was all joy until the app pinged, "Unlock VIP viewing with your all-access band." I hadn't bought all access. I shouldn't have been able to tap through, but the scanner glowed green at every gate. The security guard nodded me into places I didn't belong: media pit, production row, the medical tent. Inside the tent, the air was too cool, an enforced kindness. Cots with neat blankets. A girl my age, 30-something, sun-stupid, lay smiling at nothing. A monitor beside her beeped with no wires attached. My wristband vibrated, and a low tone started in my bones, the kind physical therapists use, the kind cults do. A tech glanced at my wrist, frowned, and went back to a tablet. "Excuse me," I said. "I think my band is wrong." He scanned it with his eyes, not the gun. "It's right," he said. "For you." I left. The app now showed paths between stages that didn't exist on the map. shortcuts through staff corridors. Fans parted from me like I had gravity. At the main stage, a woman grabbed my hand and pressed 2 fingers to the underside of my wristband. "You're lucky," she said. "Most people can't hear the tone this soon." "What tone?" She smiled. "Exactly." At dusk, the app changed again. The map tilted into 3D and showed rooms under the stages: hospitality, hydration, calibration. Under the medical tent, it showed a room called Return. The door to it wasn't on any door. My wristband vibrated when I passed the place where it should be. I tore the band off. It didn't tear. I twisted. The chip inside felt like a baby tooth not ready to come out. The bass line from the stage synced with my pulse wrong for half a minute. I sat on the grass and let the song end twice. A security guard crouched beside me. Kind eyes, good training. "If you don't want it anymore," she said, "walk out backwards. Cover the band with your other hand. Don't let it see the gate." "It?" She looked at the crowd, at the lights, at the wristbands catching every color. "The reader. It likes wins." I backed out. I covered the band. At the gate, the scanner beeped red for the first time. The guard smiled. "Real. You're good." She cut the band with a tool I hope was designed for this moment. The chip hit the trash and sang, very softly, for a second, the way a seashell sings of a place you shouldn't swim. Outside the fence, the night felt like honesty. My phone showed no past events, though I'd posted 4 photos. My wrist felt lighter and wrong. I still hear the tone sometimes when the elevator stutters between floors. It means, keep your hand down. Don't show.
Took the cheap cabin because ocean is ocean, whether you see it or not. The steward called me by my first name before I told him. He pressed a chocolate into my palm and said, "Muster tomorrow, 11. He said it like a password. Interior cabins are always midnight. I slept like a buried thing. When I woke, my phone said Wednesday. We'd boarded Tuesday. I was willing to blame naps. The hallway smelled faintly of citrus and steam. The elevator refused deck 3 and bled my button press into 4. Muster at 11. We stood under green signs with a symbol of people as dots. The staff counted us like pearls. A woman whispered, "Last year they skipped a day." I wanted to be brave for her and said, "They'll add it back." That night, I dreamed a tilt, the ship leaning until drawers opened and secrets slid out. At breakfast, the newsletter on my table had no date, just summer sailing. The trivia host asked a question about a Wednesday matinee that no one had attended. I went to the crew desk and asked for a copy of my bill. The printer jammed. The clerk pulled a crumpled page and smoothed it like an apology. The charges skipped a day. The gratuities didn't. At midnight, whatever that means at sea, I found a door marked "Crew Only," propped with a mop the way doors are propped when everyone knows the shortcut is human. I slipped through and walked a service corridor with pipes singing like whales. A porthole, one I wasn't supposed to have, looked out into black where the moon should have been both above and in the water. It wasn't. The stars had a gap like missing teeth. I took a photo. The phone showed Tuesday, then Thursday, then no date. My cabin key stopped working on 2 decks and worked on a third that didn't have my hallway. I walked those halls until I felt the ship decide to be kind. It dropped me at my door, my name on it in vinyl letters that peeled like old labels. At disembarkation, the loudspeaker told 3 groups to leave and 1 to wait. I waited. A man in a blazer checked a list twice,
then looked up like a person who has remembered where he hid the thing he shouldn't have. "You're accounted for," he said, "which isn't the same as you were here." The port agent stamped my passport with a date that felt like writing left-handed.
Thanks for listening to Midnight Horror Ledger. This file is closed, for now. If tonight helped you spot a red flag on the beach, at the motel, on a ferry, or out on the trail, share it with someone who needs the hint, and leave your own summer story in the ledger below. New entries drop at midnight. Until then, stay sharp, stay kind, stay unfindable. Good night.